Hello everybody, my name is Matthew Crazy Wolf Gillen, and welcome to the Kerbal Space Program. This is a new series that I decided to start because a community of Let's Players called Coyote Wild wanted me to make a series for them about the Kerbal Space Program. So here I am. Now, I'm not playing the game and commentating at the same time. I've actually just recorded sessions of me playing this, and I'm going to commentate over those sessions. But the name of this series is called the Interplanetary Network. Now, what is that? Well, we're going to be creating a interplanetary civilization. We're going to colonize all the planets in the system, the Kerbal system, and we're basically just going to set up transportation between planets that doesn't have to be relaunched all the time. We're basically creating a stable civilization in the universe. Now, the first thing that we have to do before we can actually, start building colonies and whatnot, we have to find out what system we're going to use to launch our assets into space. So that's what we're doing for this first episode. We are creating our first official launch system, launch vehicle. And as you can see here, we have set up a simple idea. It's not really anything too complex, but we are using the KW rocketry parts system, mod, add-on is the word, and we're constructing our launch system using the assets I got from this mod. Mainly because the reason I have the mod installed is because of the shelling capability, as you can see there. It makes it seem a little more professional, which is just how I like to play the game. Plus, the stock version of Kerbal Space Program doesn't have shells, so might as well just get a mod for it. And I've also got the Chatterer mod installed, because why not? It sounds awesome. So here we have our first launch system created, and you can see here now we are launching the system. And the first thing I noticed right off the bat is just how slow the launch is. And I didn't really quite understand why it was launching so slow, because, well, the payload wasn't really that heavy to begin with, and it surely enough, with all those engines combined, had a little more power to go, just a tad faster than that. But then I started looking over where the fuel was, and what I saw was that, not the overheat wasn't the problem, but the fuel consumption of the center fuselage was going a lot faster than the external tanks, which presented a problem, because when the center fuselage runs out, then all that's left are the external tanks, and then the center fuselage is pretty much just dead weight and is completely useless and is very counterproductive in the launch sequence. So what I decided to do was to abandon the mission. Of course, I've turned off the revert the flight thing to remove any temptations I might have, because I used to do that all the time. Instead, now I have to recover my Kerbals, but I have to abandon the mission, and I have to make sure I can, since the new Kerbal Space Program, the beta, has destructible buildings, I really do not want to destroy my space center. So I'm going to set it off course a little bit to aim for the ocean, and then I go over to my staging, whenever I start doing it, there we go. I go over to my staging, and I switch some of the stages around. So you can see I move my shelling down to be the next stage, and then I send my capsule decoupler down, so that will happen after I've jettisoned the shells. And then I cut off the engines, and you can see that there's a little bit of a cut-off delay there, so that's something I decided I was going to take note of, because I'm still learning about the KW rocketry. I jettisoned the shells, and then I jettisoned the capsule. And the reason I had to shut the engines off first was because if I didn't, they were going to continue to send me out into space, and that's a bit of a problem. I want to come back down, and I want the capsule to be able to separate properly from the rocket. And so now we're on our way back down with the rocket. The rocket is pretty much just screwed. The only thing I can hope for is that it lands in the ocean and not on top of the space center. And I kind of get what I want. I don't entirely get the perfect result. It lands on the beach, but it doesn't land in the ocean, which, is fine because it didn't destroy any of the buildings, but, yeah, there it goes. It exploded into a bajillion bits. Nothing's wrong with that, though. At least the Kerbals are okay. And then this was supposed to be me adding some fuel lines, but the footage blacked out during rendering. Uh, but I added some fuel lines that led from the external tanks to the center fuselage, and then another row of well, not a row of hoses, but some more hoses leading from the center fuselage to the external tanks, so the fuel would be distributed evenly to each of the engines, and they would all burn at the same time. And you can immediately see the results are better. And there are some of the... there's the old rocket parts, everything torn apart. I actually have a couple of probe pieces left, and the probes I've installed on there for a reason. I'll show you guys when we get this thing into orbit, because this thing, I am very certain, is going to make it there, right? I'm pretty sure it'll make it there. Nothing's going to go wrong there. Okay, so immediately we can already see that there's a huge change. We've gained a lot of speed. We are now tilted a little bit to aim ourselves outward toward the ocean. And everything's going well. We're now at throttles down because we are now in the second layer of the atmosphere. I can't remember what that's called. Some of you guys are going to have to educate me on what these 3 layers of the atmosphere are called. But it's not as dense here, so we're going to do throttles down. And we're going to start turning ourselves to aim ourselves in the correct trajectory to get ourselves into orbit. I really don't know what I'm talking about. I'm not Scott Manley or anything like that. I just wish I was. Scott Manley is really good at this game. If you want to learn more about Kerbal Space Program, you go talk to him. You go see him. So yeah, this is what our trajectory is going to look like. As you can see, it's getting a little bigger, a little better, and everything is just looking good. Everything is on the line. Everything is perfect. And we're about to run out of fuel on the first ignition, our launch engine here, and boom. Now we have to jettison our orbital insertion module. I didn't mean to shoot the engine off like that. I hit the wrong button. I wanted to slow it down, and I hit the Z key instead of the X key. And now, since we're in the vacuum, we're going to go ahead and separate those shells, because there's no longer going to be a problem with the separation imploding on my face, like what happened earlier. So now we are in the vacuum of space, and it is beautiful up here. I tell you what, look at Kerbin below us. It's so nice, and we've extended our solar panels. Now, why exactly do we need the solar panels? Well, it's actually pretty self-explanatory. The ship itself uses energy, so we have to have energy and electricity in the ship, and I didn't really put batteries on it, so I'll put solar panels on it. So anyways, what I was saying about the orbital insertion module that you see there with the white rings on it, that is actually a ship of its own, because I didn't want a repeat of Kessler syndrome, and I didn't want to pollute space with a bunch of debris and such. And once this thing got into orbit, it would be jettisoned and be completely useless. But it would still have fuel in it. So what I would do was jettison the payload, and then I would spin the orbital module back around, deorbit it, and send it back down to the planet to pretty much just burn up in the atmosphere, crash, and die. Because, it's not of any use to us anymore. Now, I am thinking about adding parachutes to it. I didn't, of course, add parachutes to it this time because, I was extremely lazy. I was just trying to see if I could get Fraps to record this without hardly any lag. And there is some lag, and I did have to turn the graphics quality down just a little bit. But, those are some of the sacrifices I have to make, so that way we don't lag like shit. And I didn't want you guys to have to go through having to deal with the lag like I have to all the time. So now we've jettisoned the payload, which is pretty much just a little orbital ship that I designed with some of the KW rocketry parts. I was also doing an engines test for this one other engine. And, yeah. So now the orbital module is going to come back down now. We're spinning it back around and getting it ready for our deorbit burn. And it's going to just crash into the atmosphere and die. This way, we're not polluting space with a bunch of debris and creating a sort of Sandra Bullock, George Clooney situation. We don't want any Sandra Bullock, George Clooney situations. No, no, no. We want nice, clean space to travel in. We'll pollute it with our own actual working modules. We don't need a bunch of space debris up there. Yet. Odds are, as this show series progresses, it's probably going to get a little worse. But not my fault. Not my fault at all. It's always the Kerbal's fault. If you have a problem and you know it's your fault, blame the Kerbals. Then that's pretty much what they're there for. They're there for you to blame, and yeah, but they're so adorable. And it looks like Jebediah wants to go outside for a little bit and just take in the sights of Kerbin, because, you know, this is the very first venture into space in the history of Kerbal kind, you know, that actually made it to space. The first one was a fluke. This one worked out well. And Jebediah figures, you know, I'm going to go outside and I'm going to take a look at the pretty, beautiful, circular or spherical place that we call Kerbin. So he's venturing away from the ship because he is a daredevil of sorts. It's Jebediah Kerman. He's going to do whatever the hell he feels like doing. And he's just going to admire the views of Kerbin. Yep. There really was no other point to him going outside the ship. I just wanted to take a look at how pretty everything was from out there. And you can already see, you know, the graphics quality is turned down a little bit. I might turn it up in a future episode just to see if Fraps will record the graphics without, you know, being intolerable with lag. So we'll have to see how that turns out. But Jebediah is going to go back into the ship, and we're going to venture around to the night side to prepare for our deorbit. And the reason we want to do that from the night side is because already you really can't even see the ship. I didn't want to re-enter the atmosphere on the night side, so I figured if I can deorbit from the night side and I can get my periapsis to about 4,000 meters, then, you know, you'll be able to see it, and it'll be a nice smooth re-entry. But I forgot this engine has a bit of a cutoff delay, so you can see that even with the engine cut off, it's still kind of running. That is a very steep drop. We don't want that. And I don't have the Deadly Reentry mod installed yet. I'm thinking about it, but yeah, that's a very steep drop. I don't want that. I want a nice, decent drop of 4,000 meters. This is our debut of this show on YouTube. I want to make sure I can make it as good as I can. So I lightly ignite the engines just a tad bit. Little tiny bit of thrust, and you can see that our trajectory is adjusting itself just a little bit. You know, nothing too major at the moment. Slowly but surely, everything is adjusting itself to a proper re-entry. And then I cut off the engine, and it's still going, obviously, waiting for that periapsis to show up. And there it is. There's that periapsis, and I'm still making my adjustments there. I want to get this thing to around 4,000 meters, so maybe I should do a few more burns here. Lightly, slowly, but surely, we are going to get ourselves to 4,000 meters. That periapsis will be 4,000 meters, and re-entry will be smooth as a baby's bottom. Yeah, this is going to be a bit of a process. I'm not good at commentating a lot of things, especially when some of these things take a while, like what this is. So this is why I've chosen this method. It's a lot easier for me to commentate. Yep, we're now up to 4,000 meters. All I really have to do now is wait till we get to the other side of Kerbin. Another one of the mods that I have installed is an RCS sounds mod. So the RCS thrusters have sound effects now, but I changed the sound effects around and put my own settings on it. And I just basically made my own little adjustments to that mod. Oh, look at that horizon. Look at how pretty that is. And here it comes. Boosh! Now we are being bathed in the glorious sunlight of the Kerbal sun. Oh, feel that on the solar panels. And yeah, okay. Now we're getting back to all seriousness here. We're getting ready for our re-entry. Our ship is not entirely faced in the proper position, and we are getting a little close to that atmosphere. So I decide I'm going to aim this ship retrograde. So with my RCS thrusters active and my solar panels eating up the sunlight, I am going to adjust the ship so that the engines are facing retrograde, but we're not going to make a burn, we're just going to decouple. And this way the module itself isn't spinning around rapidly and we're not looking like a bunch of sloppy artists here. So, yeah, there we go. We're now detaching. And then I noticed that the capsule is sideways. You know, I didn't really notice that on the nav ball for some reason, probably because I'm a stupid. But, yeah, now we've got everything adjusted just a tad bit. We're facing upright just enough. And we are facing retrograde, so the hypothetical heat shield that is there in our imaginations is facing toward the atmosphere and not the Kerbal's faces. I really did forget to go into the capsule for this because I had the Curbquake mod installed and I wanted to show you guys re-entry with the Curbquake and I forgot to do it. So, I don't know. But there's our view without the heads-up display. You know, and looking down, there's this huge expansive desert, and you're thinking, man, I hope the Kerbals have some kind of vehicle, some kind of helicopter or something that's going to be able to come find us, and I sure hope the tracking station knows where we are. Because if I had to make a guess, I'd say we're on the other side of Kerbin. I can't exactly tell where the space center is from here. I'm not very good at geography. I failed geography, if you must know. But you know, I'm just daunted by this whole thought that they're going to be landing in a desert and not near the ocean. I completely forget about the parachutes. So I ignite the parachutes before I completely forget. And then the mission is pretty much complete. I just have to sit there and wait for them to touch down on the surface of the planet and touch down. That's pretty much all there is for this episode. In the next episode, we'll probably be doing some refueling stations, but thank you for watching. If you are watching this on my channel, click the first annotation to subscribe to me. If you're watching this on Coyote Wild's channel, click the second annotation to subscribe to them. But thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video.
Shut down on time. Can we confirm the test, Columbia?